Welcome back to the Strength and Speed Podcast. I'm your host, Strength and Speed owner, Evan Perperis. We have two guests on the line today. We're going to be talking about World's Toughest Mudder. Before we get to that, though, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Atomic Climbing Holds. Atomic Climbing Holds is rolling out all sorts of new products just in time for Christmas. I would definitely head over and check them out, whether it's for yourself, to put it on your own Christmas list, or to pick up some for someone else that's a Ninja OCR fanatic. Biggest thing they just released was the Atomic Ninja Hangboard. So it's like an all-in-one training tool that you can mount on your wall. So hangboards work on fingertip strength. It's also got like a pegboard built into it. And then it's got little like nunchuck grips hanging down. So it's pretty awesome. I just ordered mine, so I'll have that in stock pretty soon. And then I'll give you guys a better review on it online. But yeah, watch out for Atomic. We were Team Atomic last year at World's Toughest Mudder when me and Wesley Kerr won. So they promote both. They help out the sport, OCR, and then also Ninja. So a lot of crossover there. So support brands that support our sport, support Atomic Climbing Holds. All right, let's get to the guests and to today's episode. So joining me, I have Jason Rulo, the inventor of the Neptune, on, who we've had before. Jason, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And how many World's Toughest have you done, Jason?
Now I have done 8.
Yeah, so
8 of the 9. I only missed the first one.
So good level of experience there. And how did you end up doing this year?
I got 65 miles. It was less. I had a goal set for 75, but I always set that goal, and it's a lofty goal. But 65, I've gotten 71, so I'm always towing that 65, 70 line last few years. So that's what I'm. I guess that's what I'm relegated to right now. You got to get better.
Right on. And we also have one of the strength and speed athletes on the program. We have Kelly Williams. Say hi, Kelly.
Hello. Hi. Thanks for having me on, Evan.
And this is also Kelly's second time on the show, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sweet. And Kelly, how many World's Toughest have you done?
This is my second World's Toughest Mudder. Both of them have been in Atlanta.
Okay, so good. We got an experience, deep, and then we've got the just Atlanta experience. And then myself, this is my 6th World Toughest, so I did 4 Vegas and 2 Atlanta. Kelly, how did you end up doing this time?
I ended up with 55 miles this year. 5 better than last year.
Gotcha. No broken foot this year, though.
No, and no broken anything. I'm totally fine.
That's a good sign. All right. And then I ended up finishing 6th overall with 90 miles. And we'll talk a little bit more about my race later. I had a lot of comments people were making me after the race and what my strategy was and stuff like that. So we'll get to that, but a little bit later.
Okay.
So let's start off with just general thoughts. So Jason, as the experienced World's Toughest guy, just kind of take me through the course in general. Just kind of your experience with Atlanta this last year, this will be the last year in Atlanta. It's moving to Dallas in 2020.
Well, I mean, I thought they did a really good job, minus the whole carabiner thing, which I know we'll talk about. But other than that, I thought they did a good job. The obstacles were kind of toned down. Not sure what they're really going for that. It didn't mean that the course was easy, though. They still had an adequate level of difficulty in there as far as doing the stuff, because they didn't take obstacles out as the race progressed and things like that. But there was only King of Swingers as their big high flyer, and even at that, they had to cut it off halfway through because they didn't have adequate coverage for divers. But other than that, it's pretty toned down as far as the obstacle stuff is concerned. But I thought they did a really good job. I wrote an article at Obstacle Racing Media, questioning what this new group was going to be able to accomplish. Were they going to make mistakes and all that kind of stuff? And I'll be honest with you, I think I tried to address all of the stuff that I had concerns about and that Molly Kenneth had some concerns about. And I think overall they did a really good job. There's always things that they can improve upon and how dynamic they respond to issues that arise. But overall, I think they did a pretty good job.
Right on. Now, you've done 8 world's toughest, where if you had to rank this one as far as, how much you enjoyed it, I guess, where would you rank that among the 8?
Well, okay, so let me just say that is an overall experience and how smoothly it went. This was right up toward the top, because everything from registration to pit check-in, getting the pit check-in, showing up for the race, having the pit area in a good spot as far as having the stables and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff was fantastic. It was all kind of smooth. It was a long walk for the parking, but I'm not sure there's much they can do about that as far as that site was concerned. But they did have buses for us and all that. And the course, because they didn't have to alter it, or they didn't alter it, other than that King of Swingers drop, I thought it was, basically the race operated exactly as they had planned, at least as far as the racers could tell. And I think as far as that stuff is concerned, it was pretty smooth. And, when you're talking about doing a 24-hour race, if it can run smoothly with 790 competitors, I think it's pretty good. At times in the past, you've had a lot of changes that have to occur, in 2017, I think it was, when they had to, completely reroute the backside of the course when people were failing that Kong Infinity thing. And the actual penalty route was shorter than the regular route.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
And
that stuff.
if you passed it, you ended up getting wet. And if you failed it, you didn't get wet, and it was quicker. It was legitimately quicker.
Yeah. So when Adkins started intentionally failing obstacles to make it easier, to make it faster, they realized, wait a second, we got to fix this. So, in that regard, the fact that they didn't have to make those changes showed that they had a good plan, and they implemented the plan, and it went pretty well. Like, it's very difficult to rate looking back. Okay, what's the smoothest race that I've done as far as world toughest is concerned? But this one ranks right up there as far as that portion of it is concerned. If you want to start talking about obstacles, high flying, and stuff like that, this is a very vanilla type thing. If you're talking to me, I understand where Tough Mudder's coming from, but I like the fact that we had to do double rainbow the one year. I like the fact that we have to do the cliff or some type of a bunch of big high flying obstacles. We don't have to be that high off the ground, but something as simple as like tramp stamp. 2016, I think, where you're bouncing up and sliding across. They've never implemented that again. Those are obstacles that are really cool and fun to do. And really, we had like Funky Monkey, and that was like it, because they even toned down Gauntlet, which is probably necessary if they didn't want to have to make mid-course changes, because people get middle of the night, they typically start failing it. But I think they could have included it, put it at the end, the whole finger hang and doorknob thing, and then just said, okay, we're stopping it there, halfway through the race or something like that. But like I said, I think it ran pretty smoothly.
Yeah, it definitely ran smoothly from that side. 100% agree with you. The online pit check-in was like 100 times better. I mean, It was so much less stressful having to like show up on Friday to check in. And what's funny is when we had Jarrett Newby on the podcast, it was like a little over a year ago, that was one of the things he discussed. He's like, why can't we just select our pits ahead of time? He's like, why can't it be like the movie theater where you literally pick your spot? The modern movie theaters now, where you pick your spot and then you just show up and reserve it. And it was like, that is a good point. So it was pretty cool. I loved seeing that come to fruition. I don't know if Jarrett's comments on the podcast had anything to do with it, or maybe someone heard it and then forgot about it and then, whatever. But it was pretty cool to see that happen, at least from my position here. And totally agree with you. People were asking me my opinion on the race, and honestly, this was my least favorite World's Toughest. And I say that not saying it was bad. I'm just saying, like the things you were saying, a lot of the there was nothing new. Like usually they roll out next year's obstacles, a couple of them in this race, and then on top of that, use it as a couple of kind of like beta tests where they have obstacles that you may never see again. They're at one World's Toughest, and that's it. And at this one,
there something special for us. Yeah,
at this one there was nothing new. So as someone who's been to 6 of them, or like 8 of them, it was like, oh, that's missing. But I think if you've only been to 1 or 2, you may not have noticed. So Kelly, what was your take on kind of the obstacles?
I think you're kind of spot on there. I don't have a historical point of reference for a lot of those obstacles. I I definitely didn't find anything super easy because it's 24 hours. But I think the obstacle placement and then some of the penalties it was different than last year, and I liked it more. So, I could only pass Funky Monkey a few times, and then I get in really cold water, and then you had to do a super long penalty. So you got warmed up. I mean, because you had to do like physical things. You had to drag that mat and jump rope. You didn't just sludge through a half a mile walk. So I thought the penalties were arduous. They were very much longer than the obstacle would have taken you. So I think they got that part correct. Same for King of Swingers. Again, you're in the water and you're cold, but then you have to go do something pretty hard afterwards. So I didn't, I thought the obstacle placement with those sorts of things, and then having most of the mud, I guess, in the first half of the course, and then it seemed like more of the water stuff in the second half of the course made it I guess it did make it seem more doable that way, that you weren't covered with mud going over a lumberjack. So, and then you weren't as nasty and muddy when you came into, say, the pit or going over Mutterhorn. So, I mean, it was easier in that regard, whereas last year you were just sloppy, muddy, no matter what you were doing.
Well, let me just say, King of Swingers, they did not beta test that thing at all.
Oh, yeah.
Did you hit the bell at all, Evan?
So my first one, I only did it twice because I started using my band on it because there was such the penalty was so long that I didn't want to risk it. But the first one, I swing out and I'm seriously like, I'm at the apex of the swing and I'm like 8 feet away from the bell. Like I wasn't even in the, I mean, I could have done a backflip, like a backflip somersault and still missed it. Right.
I was one of the first people to go off of that. I heard when I was on Gauntlet, I heard them saying, King of Swingers is opening in a minute. And I'm like, shoot. Yeah. And Kyle was standing there watching all of the melee happen and just grinning ear to ear. And then the second lap I came around, they lowered the bells by a foot.
I hit mine on my second run through.
I went for it and really hard. And I came down basically sideways, kind of did like a sideways flop in the water. That hurts, man. It's like hitting concrete.
Well,
the other two times I did it, I reached for the bar, swing out, and then I just did a nice pencil dive into the water.
Nice.
The first time I went off it, both times, like I said, I went off it maybe 4 times. I never hit it, but 2 of the times I missed it because I'm going to be honest. The one problem I have with that obstacle is I would have liked to have timed if there's 3 people up on the thing, because at any one time they only had like 2 of the towers open. So there's at least 3 or 4 people. And of those 3 or 4 people, there's like 1 or 2 of them that are doable. And then you can see the other bells are like higher. So nobody wants to use them. So everybody's in line. Well, by the time the thing stops bouncing and the bell stops moving, you could have been halfway through the penalty.
Yeah.
And that's assuming you actually hit it. So the one problem I have with that obstacle is it just takes too freaking long between attempts. But both times I got antsy, was tired, the bell wasn't completely stopped, and I just missed it because it was still moving. And the guy's like, after I hit the water, he's like, dude, you were like 2 inches to the left. And I was like, I don't know. But the first time I did it, I overextended. I've done that before on that obstacle where you do a face plant in the water, and I hit the chest first.
Yeah.
I had water bottles in the front, and it blew my vest apart. Like ripped the buckles off the front, and that had Chris, my pit guy, had to fix the vest and all this. So that obstacle, while it's fun to do, fun to high fly and do all that, for world stuff, it's problematic, I think. So to me, my favorite one has always been Double Rainbow, where you
love Double Rainbow.
Or even if you did the hanging tough version where you don't have to catch a bell, you catch a net, but the thing's not moving, so you don't have to wait for it. You just got to wait for the bar to stop. So,
yeah.
Anyway, I liked King of Swingers, even though I knew I'd never even come close to hitting the bell. I enjoyed that because it pushed me out of my comfort zone for sure.
Yeah, Double Rainbow essentially was King of Swingers the first part times 2. So it was like 2 of those like T pendulums. So you swing, reach out, grab another T pendulum, swing, and then you essentially there's like a landing mat you can walk off. So I like
The
that
best
one.
part is,
That one was fast. The reset was fast. The obstacle was fast, and it was fun. And you got to like whip through the air like an acrobat there.
yeah, and in the end, when you completed it, you didn't get wet, which just seems like a negative. When you do the bell, you hit the bell, but you still get wet.
Right.
So
that's why when they were like, if 100 people sign up, we'll add King of Swingers into World's Toughest. And I was like, why are you people signing up? That's a terrible idea. Have you ever done the obstacle when it's 30 degrees out and you're falling upside down, like after missing the bell? It's terrible. It's an absolute terror,
yeah.
But going back to what you guys said earlier about the penalties, I did think they finally nailed the penalties because, there's been some years, both at Toughest and World's Toughest, where the penalty is like, it's nothing. It's like, why am I even doing the obstacle on this? My heart rate stays lower. I can just jog the penalty, and it's a lot easier. So I did like to see them actually finally make a point there, and not only is it a run, but it's typically they added like the funky monkey. The one time I did the funky monkey penalty, it was like jump rope, and then I had to run, and then I had to drag a mat, and I was like, what the?
Yep.
And then the King of Swingers penalty was a log carry, but then like during the log carry, you went into a pit and came out of a pit. So it was tiring.
It was more like a grave.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to admit, the first 2 times I went through that penalty, I didn't even know that pit was intentionally there because no one was doing it. So I was like, okay, is this not part of the thing?
Oh,
I'm like, okay, I'm just following the crowd. And then I realized, no, that's supposed to be part of this penalty. I'm supposed to be doing that. But
I did
it took
every
2
time.
times before I realized it.
We'll get to that, but there was a lot of shenanigans going on as far as rules and stuff like that. But so we'll talk a little bit more about the obstacles. Like we were saying, they took a bunch of their standard obstacles and they made, little changes to them. Some of them were cool. Some of them were like, okay. Like Devil's Beard now had a pit underneath it. So you got wet on that one, and the straps were very tight. And towards the end, there was like a couple of those last laps. I got to the end of Devil's Beard, and I was just like laying there. I was like, please, someone lift the net. I can't really move very well anymore.
That was a struggle towards the end. Devil's Tate.
Yeah, Devil's Tate was the actual name.
I'm gonna let you in on a little secret, Evan. Part of the reason why Scott Brown was flying so fast on his last lap was because I helped him get through that freaking Devil's Tate thing. We had like 5 guys there, man. We had a little system going.
It's all Jason's fault.
He's like, all right, I'll see you. And boom, he takes off. I didn't know he was trying to run you down.
Yeah. He would have run me down anyway. So Scott Brown bumped me from 5th to 6th on the very last lap. Probably right after like Everest area, that uphill area. So yeah. Anyway, so there was that. There was Pyramid Scheme, which they actually covered in Crisco, which I didn't even realize until we were like 15 hours into the race until I realized it was covered in Crisco. I just thought it was slick.
I saw the empty bottles of oil. Yep.
I was wondering why it was always so slick at the top. I'm like, why is it more slick up here? I don't get it.
Yeah.
And then somebody told me, oh, it's because they're putting Crisco on, they're putting oil on it. I'm like, oh my God.
I wasn't a big fan of that because you couldn't do it. But then at the same time, it was positioned well enough in the race where there was almost always someone there, at least for me. And the pictures I got from it, I love, right? Like, cause I'm in race mode, I'm doing well. And there's like, pictures of me helping other people and other people helping me, which I just think is a cool concept.
I saw that. That was cool. I saw your pictures of that. Yeah.
Let's see what else we had. We had Spread Eagle, which is essentially 2 slack lines parallel over water, which was basically the same. They was a little bit farther apart than usual. There was Black Widow, which is normally a mishmash of slack lines, at different heights, kind of like a spider web over water. But this time it was basically a high wire, low wire. And I know I'm 5'6", and I was on my toes with my fingertips.
Yep.
So Kelly, what were your thoughts on that one?
That was one of those things that could I got there and I was like, son of a. And even I had someone pull it down for me. But I laterally traversed it the first time. I don't weigh enough to even pull the slack line down. So my feet never touched. And after I did that, I'm like, I got kind of mad. I was like, nope, one obstacle is not going to ruin my race. I will figure this out. So as I was, doing all the other obstacles, I came back into the pit. I said, I need my little towel. I need something so I can pull that slack line down and go across it. So in our little goodie bag, they gave us like a towel, I don't know. And so I would fling it over the top of the thing, and then I pulled it down. And so then I actually had something to hold on to as I walked across it. Because otherwise I couldn't reach it. They loosened the slack on one of them, but it still wasn't enough. I still didn't weigh enough to pull it down.
I was there when Eli did that.
Yeah.
So leave it to World WTM. They got to have old Eli Hutchinson figure this out. And he comes up and he's like, I got an idea. And he just loosens the slack line a little bit so we can pull it down enough for the short people to do it. And I'm like, do they not beta test this stuff? Yeah. I'm like, we've always had this issue where the short people are always at a huge disadvantage on some of the obstacles. They need just to have a shorty lane, but they can't there has to be like a bar, like when you get up to the obstacle, that if you're over this height, you can't use it.
Yeah, like roller coasters. It must be under this height.
Well, I saw all these wusses, these big 6'3" guys.
Yep.
I'm like,
taking
what
a short
are you
slack
doing
line
on the short lane? And he's like, it's easier. I'm like, you're backing up our line. Get out of here. Slowing down my race. But,
so I improvised with a towel. Because I refuse to take a penalty on an obstacle like that. No way.
Yeah, that's very clever. I mean, good thinking on the fly. And I'm gonna mention so in Iraq, similar story. There was a chow hall. It was in Iraq or Afghanistan. I can't remember which one. They had a chow hall, right, where the ice cream was in a separate room than the main chow hall. So they wanted to prevent the fat guys from eating ice cream that are in the army. So this is good. This is great. And this is 100% true, right? They made the door like essentially a slat that was like 6 inches wide. So you had to go. You had to go through sideways to fit through, so you could get ice cream, and then you had to like shimmy through sideways with your cup to get out. So
or be putting a Crisco on the front and the back of those big guys to get through there. That's classic.
You imagine doing that back in the States? People be so up in arms so fast.
Yeah, you can't do that. The Army openly discriminates against overweight people, so that's fair game. That's fair game, right? Like there's height weight standards, and if you don't meet them, you get kicked out of the Army. So, yeah.
Oh, jeez.
That's hilarious.
Anyway, that's what that reminded me of. But yeah, run through a couple of the other obstacles, and then we'll continue to talk about overall experience. So they had the electricity lane, which was, electroshock therapy, so hanging wires, electric eel, essentially a low crawl through wires with, through a little water pit, and then operation, the human-sized game of actual operation where you get electrocuted if you touch the sides. And then you could take that once that opened, or you could take Everest, Berlin Walls, and skid marked, which essentially is a wall with an overhang and a reverse slant wall that you climb up. So did you guys end up taking the electric lane primarily, or the
every time?
Yep.
Primarily, yeah. I did. I mean, until it opened, obviously I took the other lane. But primarily, yeah, I got some big shocks this year too.
Yeah, me too.
A lot more shocks compared to last year.
I didn't like that.
I took the electric route every time it was open. I was on the electric route.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, me too. I didn't like that the walls were the other option. Like I liked it last year when it was like the electric lane, or it was a lot of water obstacles. Like you skipped, funky. What do we call it? Blocking monster. It was
the walls are doable.
Yeah, and the walls are doable, and it's like a legit obstacle versus Tough Mud, or some of their obstacles are just like, here's mud, here's more mud, here's a low crawl through mud, here's a walk through mud, and you're like, all right, let me give me like an obstacle here every now and then. So.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate because I see where Tough Mudder was going with that. Those are obstacles where you typically need help, and in the middle of the night, as well as I know, which I'm not going to get on a big rant about, but Tough Mudder needs to address it. In the middle of the night, no one's out there. It's a freaking ghost town. So if you need help and there's no one there, you're SOL. So with the electric route, you can just be like, well, as you're walking up to Everest, nope, nobody there, going electric route, and then just go that.
What about skid mark though, and the Berlin Wall?
Well, it's the same thing though, because you need somebody to help you get over the stupid thing.
Yeah, I guess so.
So when you go the electric route, I mean, we don't need them, but
Yeah.
there are people, a lot of people. In
That's
fact,
true.
I helped one person over in the middle of the day, and I thought she was going to fall on me in the middle of the first day. I'm like, you're going to hate life later. But, you know, she could have gone the electric route the whole time and not had to worry about trying to get over. But she was struggling on lap 2.
Gotcha.
Or
Yeah.
whatever it was, lap 3.
Really, those tall walls, things like that, I despise them because of my height.
You just gotta
But
get,
I was,
you
and
gotta
they
get
said they were
creative.
taller this year. But I was actually, I could get over both of those myself. I did them every time I had to do them. I got over them by myself. On the very last lap when electric route, for me, like when the electric route was closed, I think on one of them I got a little bit of help because it was really muddy up on top, and I was like, oh boy. But so I was surprised that I could figure out how to climb up and get over them.
All right, let's go over some of the other kind of tough mud or world's toughest unique obstacles. There was the one that returning from Vegas was Statue of Liberty. So what were your thoughts on Statue of Liberty this year? So you essentially you carry a lit torch across a body of water, and you're not supposed to put it out.
This is one of the ones where there's not many I can really fault TMHQ on. This one, if Kyle was there, I'd have slapped him. Because when we were in Vegas, we had to swim a further distance, and we could not touch the bottom.
Agreed.
They could have put us out another 10 feet. Some people would have been able to touch. Most people would have had to swim. But instead, they put us on a walking route. We're walking through waist deep, sometimes chest deep water. Where's the hardcore stuff? When we were in Vegas, we had to swim a lot, like real legit swimming. And basically in Atlanta, we never really had to swim ever. The whole time we were there.
The torches this year were like 5 feet long. I used mine like a cane.
Yeah, exactly.
I would walk through and jam it into the mud. I'd jam it into the mud. And then if I was going to fall, I was just going to let go of the torch because it was going to get stuck in the mud. And then I was just going to pick it up after I stood up. The ones in Vegas were like 10 inches tall. So it was like this tiny little thing you had to like hold out of the water. So maybe I shouldn't be telling them that because they're going to go back to the old ways. But
well, I think
that was pretty easy.
In my opinion, we've always talked about how if you can't swim, you don't need to be here. And people wear vests, and that's fine. They can do that. But from what I understand about this site in Dallas, there are no real lakes. So it's all going to be man-made obstacles. Or man-made water holes anyway. So there's not going to be swimming there either. They missed the opportunity. They had an opportunity to include a swim, and they didn't put it in there. And I think they just wussed out on that one. This could have been the one chance. It wasn't even the whole race. It would have just been the one chance. And I'm like, man, I'm a pretty good swimmer, so I like the swims. I think that adds an extra element to it. But it just ticked me off. I'm like, man, this is ridiculous. They just ruined this obstacle because it went from being this really cool thing like in Vegas where all you see is like the row of lights in the middle of the lake.
Yeah, that was cool.
To there's a street light right there.
Yeah.
There's like people all standing around right next to it. You're like 5 feet from them. I'm like, yeah, this is not the same experience.
No ambiance there.
So
one of the
good idea, epic fail.
One of the things that was unique, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but this was the first time Arctic Enema was on a world's toughest course as part of the main route. At least I know it's in the last 6 years it's the first time.
Well, yeah, in New Jersey it was. It was a part of the at least now I'm trying to remember 2013. I know for sure it was in 2012, but I'm pretty sure 2013 it was also. But the funny thing was it was so cold in Jersey, they never put ice in Arctic Enema. So it never really, was a big deal. So you just did it. But, and I'm going to be honest, part of that so I'm the one that complained to Eli Hutchinson after the race last year that they didn't have any way for us to clean out before the pit. I'm going to say that I think whether it be my thing or whatever, they heard that we needed to be clean coming into the pit, and they did something about it. So I'm gonna give them credit on that, whether it be my comments or somebody else's comments that got them to do it. I like the fact it was there. It didn't bother me. It was cold.
Yeah. So I'm going through. I don't know what lap I'm on. We're a couple hours into the race, And I go into Arctic Enema, and it was actually like a double Arctic Enema. So it had normal Arctic Enema, and then it had a second dumpster that you went into and did like a cage crawl. And when I go to under the cage crawl, I go to cross it like a normal cage crawl, and my thumb gets caught on something. And I was like, and I'm like, so I basically stop moving because my thumb stops moving. And I give my thumb a tug, which obviously is not a good idea. And I drive whatever's stuck into my thumb further in. And then I'm like, oh, that's not a good idea. So I go back and I back up, and I essentially, somehow there was like a tiny piece of fence sticking out that my thumb got caught in. So I pull my thumb out. I pull this thing out of my thumb. And then I come out of the water, and Sue Harvey Brown, who used to work at Merrill, was volunteering. And she's like, "You all right, Evan?" I was like, she's like, "Did you cut yourself?" I was like, "Maybe." But it was so cold, like none of the, my blood vessels were still constricted. And I made it to, Mutterhorn, which is essentially the next obstacle. And my hand just starts bleeding profusely, like blood all down my hand. It's like dripping onto my pants. I was like, oh, geez. So I crossed the finish line, wrap it in rock tape. I just essentially did like a pressure, just wrapped it a bunch and just kept running. And that lasted for about two or three more laps. The tape fell off and then started bleeding mid-lap again. And I just basically took it and jammed it against the side of my bleg mitt, and eventually it stopped bleeding. But yeah, that was my fun Arctic Enema story. And I don't blame, Sue went in there afterwards and was looking to make sure there was nothing sticking out. Like, I have no idea what I got caught on, but she couldn't find anything, and I didn't hear anyone else make that mistake. So, I do not blame Tough Mudder for that. That's just me. That's, I just find sharp objects and rip myself on them. I ripped the front of my shorts this time, and I ripped the back of my shorts. So whoever saw me on miles like 40 to 50 got a good view of my ass, because it was straight up just hanging out.
I saw you run past with those Synergy shorts. Those are the ones you ripped.
The Marina Sport shorts, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you ran past us at one point. I don't know. It was like probably close to midnight. You ran past Scott Wozicki and me, and I didn't notice any ass cheeks hanging out or anything. So
it was too late.
We were spared there.
I ran 2 laps. I knew I was going to put on a wetsuit soon in the next 2 laps. So I was like, you know what, whatever. And I honestly forgot my ass was hanging out. But it was like, it wasn't a cheek. It wasn't a cheek. It was like down the middle, like by the crack there. So.
Oh, gotcha.
Nice.
Which tends to be my MO. I did it in 2017 too, and I wore it for like 2 or 3 laps then too. But so. Good times. All right, let's see what else. So general thoughts about the course in general, as far as, and I'll share my opinion. Quantity of water and mud. Jason, you can go ahead.
Well, so obviously when you increase the amount of water, you increase the amount of mud, because you are now crawling out of water and getting more and more mud built up. I think they did a pretty good job of making us wet. There were some complaints. I was one of them, that they would pull us out in the middle of the night and we wouldn't get wet. So I think, they're like, okay, we're going to make you really wet. So they included a lot of water obstacles. I think some of it was gratuitous. But others, they tried to make it, I think, obstacles are obviously more challenging. An obstacle like Devil's Taint is hard. And then they add a little bit of water in there, a little bit of cold water in there, and that, just gets you wet. And then you take an obstacle like Kiss of Mud, and now you just got this soupy, nasty mud stuff. That's mud, but it's still like basically watery mud. So, and then you have Mud Mile. So almost every obstacle that was like a quote unquote real obstacle, unless it was one of the ones that you didn't fall in, you were definitely getting wet. So, I like I said, I think they were trying to add difficulty with the water, but there was other things they could have done with obstacles. I think the one thing that they lacked on is innovation when they're coming up with new stuff this year. They just basically rehashed old stuff like we talked about before.
I think this was as far as I can remember, this is the wettest course, period. Like, if you failed every obstacle, you got wet literally at every obstacle. And even if you didn't fail, you got wet a lot of them on some point, like even Pyramid Scheme, right? You're standing in shin deep water, or even Spread Eagle, your knees or hands or something, or maybe your chest are dipping in the water for a little bit. Electric if you crawl through electroshock therapy, you're crawling through mud and water. Electric eel, you're crawling through water. Operation, you're standing in shin deep water. Cage crawl, you're swimming through water. Arctic enema, water. Augustus Gloop, water.
Yep.
King of Swingers, water. Gauntlet, if you fail it, water. Yeah, it felt like
swingers, water either way.
It felt like everything had water.
Lots of water. Yes, I would agree with that. A lot of water.
I did like Augustus Gloop. My favorite Augustus Gloop of all time is still the one we had in Vegas where you had to swim underneath the barrel and then go up the thing and it's spraying on you and all that stuff. I still like that the most. You guys keep getting that I like these swimming obstacles. But I like the fact they added some difficulty with the rope. I
like this one.
The other Augustus Gloop was stupid.
Yeah,
they're too easy.
I like this Augustus Gloop. So for those of you who don't know, the Augustus Gloop is a tube that goes up straight up, and essentially it's got a ladder inside, and they're spraying water down. They removed the tube, kept portions of the ladder, and then she had a rope. So it was like a slant wall with like footsteps and knots on the rope that you could climb up. So I thought it was good. It increased the difficulty a little bit. That was one of the few obstacles where like things actually got harder, like legitimately harder. Like it taxed your body more. It was versus just like adding Crisco or adding.
Yeah, that one was challenging, and then the hardest part was getting from the bottom of the obstacle up the hill again. By the end of the night, it was so I had to crawl on my hands and knees because it was so slippery to get up the hill.
Yeah, it was pretty much. There was one track that if you went to one track, your feet would stick pretty well, so you could get all the way to the top. But yeah, that was definitely an added element to the obstacle. But that was one I think they got right. But a lot of them, I think they and they brought down they listened and they brought down Lumberjack a little bit. It wasn't as crazy as it was last year.
Yeah,
still not easy, but not as crazy.
Yeah,
that was a lot easier than last year. Lumberjack.
All right, one of the other cool things they had this year, or interesting things I would say, was the coach's mid-lap pit. So in the middle of the course, you'd run up, and it was like two connexes connected to each other. A lot of times there'd be strobe lights on the inside, smoke machines, and Coach T Mud was there along with Stephanie Bishop, previous World's Toughest Mudder champion, and they would be blasting music and dancing, and lights would be going off and stuff like that. And you could also, when you came out the far side of it, you could actually get mid-lap refuel. So your pit crew could come out there and actually pass you food, but they couldn't exchange gear mid-lap. So it was food only, although you could dump gear if you wanted to. So that was something new, something different. Jason, what's your opinion on Coach's mid-lap pit there?
Well, before I get into it, what do you think about it? Did you think it was something that was necessary? Do you think it was just, kind of gratuitous craziness out there?
I mean, I didn't think it was necessary. I didn't use it. I thought it was cool. I mean, it was just, they're just trying to liven up the atmosphere a little bit more, and I get it. And so I thought it was nice. I know Stephanie, so I enjoyed being able to say hi to her on every lap. And, some of the other guys, Matthew Lowe was out there, some of the other World's Toughest Mudder community people. So it was nice to see some people out there. If I'm going to pick between that and like a legit obstacle, I'm going to ask for a legit obstacle. But, if I can get both, then yeah, let's go with both.
Well,
yeah, I thought it was super fun. I mean, it was a total DJ rave. I mean, that music and lights, and every time I came around, it was bumping. I think, I'm not sure if it was necessary or not. I enjoyed it. I always listen to that kind of music when I work out anyways, kind of techno dance stuff. But I think it flopped though, because no one was ever there. It was so cool. Like, it was a really cool idea, but I think I'll let Jason talk on that then.
Well, that was the thing I was going to get at, is that I talked to Chris Balvin, and he measured the distance. He was our pit crew leader, and it was 0.7 miles from the pit. One thing that I think Tough Mudder doesn't consider, because I know why they did this. They wanted to get people out in the middle of the course and kind of get like, so because we get out in the middle of nowhere, and it's kind of boring out there in the middle of the night. There's no one around. So they were trying to get people out there. And I think that's the reason why they included that pit, quote unquote, pit stop. And that's why they were trying to get people out there. The problem was it's 0.7 miles. Well, here's the deal, and this is what I think Tough Mudder needs to understand this part of it. And I just don't think, conceptually, because a lot of those guys haven't run this race and this is new to them, they probably didn't think of this, but most pit people do not serve only one master. There are multiple pit people that they are looking after. So they can't run what would be almost a mile and a half loop all the way out there and all the way back if they're going to be servicing somebody else. There's no way, they can't get enough time. So there's not really time for them to get out there. I think that's part of the reason why it flopped, is because it was way out there. It was super fun. I think it's a great idea. But one of the things I want to address, and I'm actually writing an article that I'm going to include this in, is about 2 years ago, I had a discussion with Mark Ballas, owner of Green Beret Challenge. And he said if he were to do a course like World's Toughest Mudder, he would do a figure 8 type course where the course looped back around to the middle so that even if it didn't cross into the pit, it would be really close.
Yeah.
And that way you would have only half of the course at any one time completely away from everybody. And I think Tough Mudder could have done that with this course. They could have looped us back in a figure 8 type motion, even if only all you did was loop back around when we came over the top of like skid marked and all that, and turned right and went toward where Arctic Enema was, and then went down that way. You could, and then went down to Lumberjack that way, and then loop back around. If they'd have put something like Coach right there on that corner, or maybe out a little bit further, they would have had people everywhere because that's close proximity to the pit. It's almost to the pit, but they could have put it out a little bit further. But a loop, an 8 loop where we cross back over the course, and Tough Mudder has many ways to cross this over. All they would have really had to do was put Mudder Horn there or one of their other loop over obstacles where they've done that in the past. And now you remove this issue about people being way out in the middle of nowhere the whole loop and nobody being around. And I just don't, I don't think they're conceptually understanding how the race needs to be set up if you're trying to get people around people at all times. If you're trying to remove that issue, they need to think about it in a little more dynamic way where we say, okay, how are we going to get them back, loop back in here and then loop back out and around so that we can get people seeing everybody halfway through the race and they're not out in the middle of nowhere out in that field and all that kind of stuff. I think if they would have done it like that, something similar to that, and brought Coach a little closer, they would have gotten what they were looking for. I thought they missed on that because they just put it too far away.
Yeah, I think it was a good experiment. I think making that figure 8 is easier said than done conceptually. Yeah. And then the only thing
it depends on the course.
True. The only thing I'll say is if you put it too close, it turns into pit 2, and then you have hundreds of people there. So maybe they're trying to figure out what's the appropriate distance. I think based off how this one went, 0.7 from the pit is too far. I think that we can all agree with that. Maybe 0.3 or something might be more reasonable, but and it's got to be clear how to get there versus, I don't know, it's kind of disorienting when you're in the pit and you're like, well, where's the course? And someone's like, yeah, it's like in that direction. You like open palm point, in a direction.
Yeah, exactly. So. We all went off into the woods for a little while and then we brought back around. And, I think the coach's idea is a good idea. I think they need to have that on course. I think where they locate it they need to think about the fact that the pit crews are not going to be able to just walk off in the middle of nowhere for half a lap. Trying to service other people, and they've got other things they got to do, and it's just going to take too much time. So, if they're trying to get that, that vibe out there where they get a lot of people, they're just going to have to put it closer to the pit.
And that figure 8 pattern, you're stealing a playbook or a page from the Hobie Call How We Get OCR Televised playbook. So his idea was essentially all courses should look like a clover leaf. So essentially you go out, you come back and do obstacles. You go out, come back and do obstacles. You go out, come back and do obstacles. That way, a television camera can essentially set up in one place, closely one place, and basically move, 100 yards between obstacles and film people and be able to see multiple people at obstacles at multiple times. So, cool concept. I've yet to see. I think companies have tried in the past, but it takes a special venue that is capable of doing that, and makes the waste. I don't know. Then the obstacles are, you're basically doing obstacles running a bunch, which I guess is not much different than what we currently do. But yeah. So let's get into some of the things that were very unique to this World's Toughest. So for the first time, they did obstacle bypass bracelets, which they've had at Toughest Mudder this year, but were new for World's Toughest. So essentially, when you came through at 30 miles, they give you a green, not green. I'm staring at my CTG bracelet. They give you an orange wristband, and then you can redeem that at any obstacle and bypass it. And you got one at every lap, so you could build them up if you wanted them, or you could use them on each lap or whatever you want there. And then in addition to that, they had the golden carabiners, which are actually red carabiners, which allowed you to bypass chunks of the course, which they've done in the past. But in the past, it was only one carabiner, or you get one, maybe two if you're lucky. And this year is a little bit different. We'll get to that. Let's start off with the bracelets. So the single obstacle bypass bracelet. Kelly, give me some opinions on that.
I really enjoyed that because for obstacles like King of Swingers that I've failed at like 4 times, after that to have a bypass bracelet saved me a lot of time. So I really enjoyed that. Like during the toughest races, I kind of saved them up for the very end. But at this race, I used one every lap. And I always use it on King of Swingers. And then after that, I used it on Funky Monkey probably.
Yeah,
I liked it. I thought it was legitimate. You earned it after a certain, amount of mileage. You got one of them. It was pretty cut and dry.
Yep, I like it. Jason, any counterpoint to that, or you happy?
No, I think it's a good thing. A good way. Strategically, I would use it for King of Swingers. If it wasn't King of Swingers, I would be using it at Mutterhorn because they're the King of Swingers. I failed a lot. Only obstacle really I failed, and then the Mutterhorn takes 4.5 minutes to do. So if it takes that long, I can cut out a lot of time by just not doing it. So yeah. I mean, there's strategery that goes along with that.
That's what I used them for, those 2 obstacles. So I think we're all on the same page with the bracelets. Good. Let's keep moving forward with that, hopefully.
Yep.
The carabiners. So they're at the rule briefing on Friday. They're telling us about the carabiners, and they're like, yeah, they're going to be hidden throughout the course. You can earn some of them on the course. We're throwing, 100 of them in, what do we call it, a mud mile. We're throwing them at the bottom of Arctic Enema. We're going to have a bunch of rubber ducks that you can redeem for prizes. And he's briefing, and I'm sitting there, and I go to my dad. I was like, is this world's toughest scavenger hunt? Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And the race started, and actually was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. So I earned a bunch on the Funky Monkey level up lane. So essentially it was dead ringer. So rings up to the top. You take the rings with you, and then you get on the wheels on the way down. So I like that you could earn it there. Wasn't crazy that they were just like thrown about in the mud. I liked some of the ways you could earn them, right? Like there's several that were actually in electroshock therapy, like on a live electrical wire.
I tried that.
And I saw people going for it and like essentially trying to unhook it. So that was interesting. But then, yeah. Well, Jason, why don't you take it from here? As far as I think they worked well for the first maybe 12, 13 hours of the race, maybe even 15. But then the last 8 things kind of, got out of control in my opinion.
I think conceptually it was a pretty good idea that I understand what they were trying to go for. Now you can't have. It just seemed to me like they didn't, and this was actually told to me by a volunteer who I know. That they were not given any instruction as to how to give them out. He was just like, yeah, they just gave me a bag full of them. But, this one girl was asking us to do push-ups and stuff like that. I think if you get one for completing Funky Monkey in the middle of the night, okay, good, fine there. You get one you put one hanging off the middle of Gauntlet so that you're able to swing on those rings and still grab one. Good on you. Fine. Fantastic. We got that one there. Whatever you want to do. It's specific, anybody has the ability to get it. And it has to be difficult, a difficult task to obtain.
Right.
But if you earn it, you earn it. That's fine. That's great. But to start asking people random questions, like one of the guys asked me, what was the birth date of the Marine Corps? What the heck does that have to do with racing?
Yeah.
And if he asked, now here's the thing, if he asked Trevor Psychos that answer, Trevor knows that answer. But if he asked Chris Mendoza's not may or may not know that answer.
Right.
So I don't think you can have it that when it's a competitive race, as far as your guys is concerned, and it is a competitive race, you can't have the randomness of giving out carabiners for that. You got to have some kind of specific thing that everybody has a right to earn.
Yeah, and they really, I mean, they got out of control those last couple laps. I mean, there was some volunteers who were literally like, we'd run up and he would just throw them in the air, and I'd like pick one up and be like, okay, I walked into Coach's Quick Pit at one point, and I literally found a handful on the ground, and I was like, okay, like they were just littered all over the floor. I was like, okay,
that's crazy.
It was stuff like that.
I didn't get that lucky.
It was just like craziness like that. The sign said 3. It started off to use the bypass. It required 3 carabiners. Then it dropped to 2, and then it eventually dropped to 1. And then, sometimes when it was at 2, the volunteer would be like, yeah, do something, do a dance, and it'll only be 1. It's like, if that's the instructions that Tough Mudder headquarters gave them, then that's fine. But it seemed like the rules were just completely made up and just like anything goes. It doesn't matter. I saw people bartering with the volunteers. I saw people bullying the volunteers. One of the volunteers was like, it's two carabiners. And they're like, well, I only have 1. Here's 1. And they just ran off. And it's like,
oh, what?
Seriously? It was, you're not supposed to trade them between people. I saw people trading them. I saw people using carabiners as obstacle bypass bracelets and vice versa. Like, it was complete shenanigans those last, I'd say, about 6 hours of the race. So I did not like it.
I agree with that. Yeah, it was kind of out of control by the end.
Yeah, and then not a fan of it. I hope they tighten. Like, I don't mind keeping them, but you need to tighten how they're distributed and have it be more regulated.
Exactly.
Yeah, there was no regulation. I figured it out pretty quickly that there was kind of a game to it, because I was going through Electric Eel, and there was one hanging there, and there's this guy taking them off like there's nothing going on. And so I was like, he's not getting shocked. Well, let me try. That was a bad idea.
Yeah.
I got the jolt of my life. And then I looked at the guy. He had these thick rubber gloves on. And he took it off for me, and he gave it to me. So I made my way through Electric Eel, and there was someone from TMHQ standing there. And I looked at her. I said, that's just pure evil, hooking them on there and watching us try to get them off. And she goes, if you go through there again, I'll give you a carabiner. And so I was like, and because all night I was looking for carabiners and everybody had them and I didn't. So that's why I tried to take it off of Electric Eel. I was desperate, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, this is a game. This is what they do. I go, sure, I'll go back through Electric Eel. I'm small. It was easy to go through Electric Eel without getting shocked. And so then I earned my first carabiner that way. And then I was like, oh, this is the game. And fun, but there's way too many that were just handed out. Yeah.
Even talking so I asked Trevor's opinion afterwards, Trevor Psychos, the winner of the race. And he's like, yeah, I don't really like it. He's like, so he ran 105 miles, and he's like, cause I know in my mind, he's like, I know I only ran like 103 miles. And I was like, I don't think that really matters, Trevor, but that's fine. Yeah. Like, I do get where he's saying, like, my mileage was 90, but I know in my head I did not run 90, and I had enough time that if I didn't have to use the carabiners, I still would have gotten 90. But I just don't, I liked it when you can use the carabiners and you just bypass the obstacles since you run the golden carabiner route, but it's not cutting off length of the course. It's just cutting off obstacles. So yeah, we'll see where they go forward with that. Again, speaking of the rules, I just saw so many shenanigans in the last 6 hours. I mean, I saw people walk around obstacles because there was no attendant there, and easy obstacles like mutter press, right? Like people crawl under barrels, and I was like, "Do you seriously just walk around that?" I saw, and then there was the one that was like a spider web of ropes through the woods.
Uh-huh.
I watched someone walk around that, and they're like, "I never cheat," but they're like, but I don't feel like doing this. And, I'm not in podium contention. I'm not in, I'm not going to win any prize money, and I don't cheat. And like, I'm watching the person cheat. And it's like, it was like, I saw that. I saw even the little one, right? So there's a path. The path is marked and it's just off the road. and there's a lot of people walking right on the edge of the road. All right, I get that, right? Like if you can reach down and still touch the course marking, I guess I'll allow that, as long as it's not like you're blatantly bypassing a obstacle. But then at one point, the course actually like goes up on the hill a little bit, so you have to walk on the side of the hill and then back down because you're avoiding like a big drainage ditch, and people are just beelining it up the road. Like seriously, guys, like the course marking clearly shows you, and it's only 10 feet, but it's like the principle of it, And again, people were like, oh, well, if they're not in contention, what does it matter? And it's like, well, the problem is when everyone breaks the rules, and then you have the elites competing, and the elites are watching all these people break the rules with literally no consequences. People are gonna be like, well, if no one's following the rules, why should I follow the rules? And then you have rampant cheating across the competition there. So,
well, I'm gonna be honest. That little jog out you were talking about there, but the drainage ditch, middle of the night, I walk right past that thing. I'm like 20 yards past it. I'm like, wait, where's that thing at? And I look around. I'm like, oh, I passed it. Dang it.
Yeah.
It was the only time I missed it, but I was like, it just occurred to me. I was on the road, walking on the road, and wasn't paying any attention. I just walked right past that spot. But I saw a lot of people do it on purpose.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. But yeah, I think you have way too many people who are not competitive athletes doing this race, and they don't understand the spirit of competition. They're just out there for their own reasons, and it's not really, to them, it's not a competition. So cheating is okay in their mind because they're not really out there to compete. And you'll hear them say, well, I'm racing my race. Yeah, but there's rules for a reason. And if you play any other sport, you're not allowed to make up your own rules. Yeah. So you pretty much need to do the rules that they've given you to play by.
Yeah, and then the rubber ducks too. I mean, I don't even know what to say about that. There's a bunch of rubber ducks floating in
They're silly
Loch Ness Monster, and if you picked one up and it had a marking on it and you carried it all the way back to the race center, you got a prize. So
I thought that was a joke. I didn't realize it was real.
I thought it was too, but I found on the ground, I saw a rubber ducky and I picked it up. I'm like, ooh, it's got a mark on it. I'm like, somebody dropped this. I shoved it in my vest, and then I found another one on the ground and shoved it in my vest. So I went to get my I got carabiners for both of them, because I went to the race center and got my band, and I go, well, what's with these ducks? What do I get? He goes, is there a marking on them? I go, yeah. He goes, oh, you get carabiners. I go, oh, sweet. I'm glad I carried them back with me. Yeah, it was silly. It was arbitrary. I don't know.
I couldn't tell what during the rules briefing. I couldn't tell what they were joking about and what they weren't. Right. So like I couldn't tell if the rubber ducks thing was serious.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell if when he's like, we threw carabiners at the bottom of Mud Mile. I was like, well, I'm not diving in there because I don't know if you're serious. And I ran into Corinne, who ended up coming in third. This is like her 8th world's toughest. She did 75 miles. She was like, yeah, I found 2 carabiners in the bottom of Mud Mile. And then I was like, oh, are you serious? They're serious. Okay. So like the next time I went through, I'm like dragging my hands and diving in, trying to find some. I didn't find it. But yeah, a little too much randomness. I like the ability to earn them, like we said. And, I hope they consider some of those things moving forward. All right. Before we go, we'll do a quick kind of how your race went personally and any final thoughts. And then we'll do tell us one thing about yourself that people would be surprised to know. So we'll start off with Kelly. How did your race go, and any kind of quick highlights, and we'll go from there.
Well, my race went really well. I didn't quite hit the mileage that I wanted to, but most people say that probably. So I hit 55 miles. I finished 3rd in my age group, which was kind of cool that they did the age group awards. I thought, it's kind of, it's nice. I mean, it's not necessary, but that was nice. And then I think I finished 17th female overall. I would say the biggest difference from last year is that I was not a frozen popsicle. So I would say some of the gear choices that I made and timing on things made a big difference in my comfort level. Like last year, I don't ever remember being comfortable 1 second. This year, I was pretty, I don't know. It didn't feel so bad. Maybe it was just because of the experience. There was certain things that just went a lot better this year. I was pretty happy with how I felt. I felt strong throughout the race. I didn't feel like all stiff and tired like I did last year. I was able to eat a lot better. My nutrition was a lot stronger. So I really was happy with how the race came out for me.
Will you be returning to Dallas 2020?
You know, I will be there. I'm not sure in what capacity. I will always be there because I know Jason's going and I will always support him. So I will either be racing or I'll be pit crewing. So I will be there though.
Gotcha. Jason, how did your race go, and will you be at Dallas 2020?
So like I said, my race went well. I mean, I didn't have any major. So in the past, always something comes up. I always tell people, they're like, well, if this hadn't happened, I would have got this mile. Yeah. But if that hadn't happened, this would have happened, or that would have happened. So There's always something. In the past, I've had dislocated shoulder. I had extreme nausea in 2017. Like for 12 hours, I couldn't eat anything, like literally nothing.
I was witness to
I was
that.
puking my guts out. Yeah. Kelly gave me a thing. You got to eat this rice. I put it down, literally walked 50 yards and puked it back up. So I was like, yeah, that's not happening. So, I've had those situations, and I've had in I think it was 2015, I couldn't bend my knee for 10 hours, going up and down. So those are all like the trials and tribulations. So this race, my body felt good. I felt good. No major issues. And, I had to walk a little bit overnight, but I thought the race went well. Like I said, I got 65 miles. I was top 10%. I got like 8th in my age group. Believe it or not, here's a fun fact. 1 out of every 8 racers is male 40 to 44 age group at this race.
Huh.
It was crazy. I would have never thought that many guys my age were doing this race, but yeah, it's so I think it went pretty well. Will I be there in Dallas? That's like a foregone conclusion. Assuming something stupid doesn't happen, I don't get hurt or something like that. I will definitely be there.
Sounds good.
So that's my plan. I think Dallas is a good site. I do think it's comical that the first thing people say is, oh, it's going to be warm. Well, I looked up the climatological historical data. The average temperature, high and low, are almost identical to Atlanta at that time of year. So, and if anybody's ever been to Texas and that part of Texas, it's a toss-up anyway. So you got kind of a crapshoot of what your weather is going to be that time of year.
Yeah, November it's always a crapshoot regardless of where you are in the country. I will say I've checked the weather before, and I think it's going to be, probability tells me it's going to be warm. That's what its probability tells me. It was like 70 last night. So I'll take those odds over. I feel like more often when I look at Atlanta, it's cold. And more often when I look at Vegas, it's cold. Versus when I look at Dallas, it's usually warmer. However, the Spartan Ultra Beast is about 2 weeks before World's Toughest in Dallas. And there's been plenty of times where their buckets are frozen. So it's not a guarantee. As always, come prepared for everything. And, everyone has to deal with the same conditions and kind of go from there.
People aren't going to do that. What's going to happen is a week before the race, I'm going to get 20 people contacting me wanting Neptunes. And they're like, can you just bring it to the race? Because I need to have it on race. I'm like, you know how much stressful this is for me? You should have ordered this 2 months ago and just, taking your chances, not been like, oh, well, I'm not going to order it until I really need it. So that's pretty much the way it always goes for me. They always underestimate how cold they're going to be and think they can make it without it. But whatever, it's a good problem.
Yeah. All right, so quick rundown of my race. So my plan this year was, I was feeling light. I weigh less than I normally do, feeling very fit, put in some really solid training miles leading up to it. And, I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go for 100. And, historically, that means I'm prepared. I was prepared to slow down in the second half of the race. So my plan was to, log about 50 miles-ish in about the first, a little over 10 hours and run my own race and just kind of, run for as long as I can without a wetsuit. So, because once that wetsuit goes on, I feel like it affects me pretty bad and I slow down a lot more than obviously everyone slows down with the wetsuit on because it weighs more and it restricts movement. But I feel like comparatively to some of my competitors, I feel like I slow down more. So I went out and, contrary to some people's belief, I was just running my own race. And on lap 2, someone's like, "Great job, you're in first." And I was like, "I'm in what? That's not where I want to be." Whatever. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to stick to my plan, keep running my own pace. And people after the race were like, "Oh, you were going so fast." And I was like, well, again, I'm just running what felt comfortable to me. I looked at, my GPS heart rate data, and according to my GPS, which is wrist-based, so it may not be 100% accurate, my heart rate was 147 average for the first 50 miles. I had it running the whole time. And so people were like, "Oh, you're pushing too hard." It's like, it felt easy to me, and my heart rate agrees with that. And my muscles, maybe not so much.
157 is easy for you?
147.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's like an easy aerobic run. So
yeah, no, I get that. I was like 157. That sounds like pretty hard run. What are you talking about? Anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, so at some point someone's like, "Oh, you're like 20 minutes in front of," I can't remember what they said, Trevor or Chris, and I was like, literally don't care. It's completely irrelevant. We're like 8 hours into the race. It doesn't matter. I'm just running my own thing. And what ended up happening was I was trying to like stair step down into a full wetsuit, and I ended up going from Neptune to neoprene top on the next lap, and then I ended up jumping to full when I should have gone from Neptune to swim run shorty and run with that for a couple of laps before I switched to full. Because what I ended up putting on the full, realized I was severely restricting movement, changed back into the shorty, ran on that for 3 laps, got cold, back into the full. So I ended up doing like 3 wetsuit changes, and normally I only do 1. So I killed a bunch of time there. And then, I just felt like I couldn't run real well with the wetsuit on, and slowed down, and eventually hit the wall pretty hard. And, just because being tired of running 60 plus miles, and slowed down and kind of trudged my way to the finish line. So no regrets. I typically play it safe and kind of climb my way to the top slowly. And I did run my own race, and I felt good. And, that's how it turned out. So people seemed to be real excited that I was in first. I was completely unemotional about it. I was like, yeah, it's still really early. It really doesn't matter. But if people were like, "Oh, you're in first," I was like, I literally don't care. It's complete. It's a 12. And I ended up getting past. Actually, when Trevor finally passed me, it was around hour 12, and I didn't know I got passed because we both went we were both in the pit around the same time, and we left from different exits. So I didn't see him leave. So he passed me before I actually realized it. And then I think a couple laps later, he actually lapped me, and that's when I realized he'd passed me when he was already a lap ahead. So.
I thought he said that he said something to you as he was running out of the pit. You probably didn't hear him. I thought he said that
he said, "Hey, Evan."
He was like, "Hey, Evan," and took off running just because, he realized that he was passing you at that point.
Yeah, he said that I think I was putting on the wetsuit at the time. I didn't hear him. I remember seeing him over my shoulder because our pits were like back to back. But I thought he was still there when I left. But there's half a dozen people standing around, so it's not like it's only you and him. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, Trevor did an amazing job at 105. Chris Mendoza, another amazing job, 100. And then Javier Escobar also got 100. So it's pretty crazy that, to be on the podium this year, you needed 100, which is
it's crazy stuff.
Shows the progression of the sport, and I think we'll continue to see more of that in the future. So, even with the lack of prize money, there's some question of like, are people going to be as competitive? And I think
they certainly were this year.
Yeah, I mean, this year it made literally no difference. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was more 100-mile finishers on the podium this year than last year, and then the women's mileage was higher too, right?
For sure.
Women only got 75 last year, and winner was 80 this year. So
yeah, it's awesome stuff.
So that's kind of a quick rundown of my race. Feel good about it. I'm ready to put some more training miles in next year and see how things go. I do my life progress, or my plan of life is always very slow progression over a very long period of time. And I will continue to improve, albeit marginally, while other people, bounce up and down. So that's what I've been doing in fitness for the last 20 years. So I'm good with the slow approach. Not a problem. But yeah, my body seems to shut down at 90 miles. My PR in 2016 was 90 miles. My PR for this is 90 miles. Endure the Gauntlet, my 48-hour Conquer the Gauntlet was 90 miles. OCR mill, the 24-hour OCR treadmill run was 85 miles. So I got some training to figure out to kind of push that upper end limit just a tiny bit higher.
Well, see, now you have me disappointed because the other 290 milers, I ran actually partial laps with you, at least portions of it. But this time I run nothing because you smoked me right off the bat and you were gone. And there was no chance I got to run with you at all. So,
yeah, my plan was even effort, uneven pacing, right? So it feels easy for the first 10 hours. I was just going to cruise. And then when I put the wetsuit on, I was going to slow down. And, my pace chart reflected that. And maybe I'll post my pace chart later, like what my actual plan was. But I was on pace according to what I wanted to be for most of the race. I mean, for like 16 hours of the race, I was where I wanted to be. And then I started falling apart. And then when you add in the actual pit splits on the chart they show online doesn't reflect pit times. So when you add in pit times, it pushes me a little bit off pace.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right.
But you still got 90. You still crushed it. Yeah.
People were real excited. I had so many people say good things to me afterwards, which was super nice, both about my book and leg mitts and then my performance. So that was really cool. I did appreciate that. I think my Facebook post made it seem like I was upset. I don't know. Most of my posts are fairly devoid of emotion. So I'm just stating facts there, and I think people read into it.
And your lack of emotion in your statement there pretty much is the way they need to read into it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just stating facts there. So I was like, I led the race for 11 hours, which is cool, but doesn't really count for anything. And it doesn't. I'm a realist, right? Like that's the end of the day is where you finish matters at the end of the day. It doesn't matter where you were at the halfway point. But it was kind of cool to be, I led, Jason Harley led the race for the first lap, won the green bib. I led the race for the next 11 hours, and then Trevor led the race the last 12. So that was kind of cool, something to be proud of. So Matt Davis was like, "You're running faster than Ryan Atkins," and I was like, "Don't be ridiculous. I was not running faster than Ryan." It only seemed like that because Ryan Atkins wasn't there, so there's no one to compare me to, right? So Trevor's slow and steady. Trevor's always climbs. Chris Mendoza always climbs, and even they were up towards the front, I'd say fairly early for themselves. I mean, you can ask them.
Yeah, they were. So they passed me at probably 5 hours in or something like that. They came walking past, and Mendoza's always quoting Talladega Nights, slingshot engaged every time he passes me. He likes to do that to me. And they passed me, and I think at that point, maybe Matt Hansen was in second. I don't know. There was somebody between them, but they were running together, trying to chase you down. You were a good ways ahead at that point. So they were slow and steady, but they were moving. But it sounded like you were able to hold them off for a long time.
Yeah, solid. All right, let's start wrapping things up. Again, throughout this podcast, I'd say we were very critical of Tough Mudder and World's Toughest Mudder, but that's because we've been to so many and because we love it so much. So, I think if you've listened to this and you made it this far, just know that I absolutely love it. I'm definitely going back next year. I'd say we were critical, again, because we've experienced it so much and we want it to be the best event possible. And it was still a great time. And if this was your first World's Toughest, you should be 100% proud of your mileage, whether you got 25, 50, or 75, or whatever you got. And you should be 100% proud of enduring through 24 hours of OCR, because regardless of the course, whether it's, hard or difficult compared to a previous year, or the weather's nice or shitty compared to a previous year, spending 24 hours doing obstacle course racing is a hard feat, and it's something everyone should be proud of, and you should be clutching those bibs and those black headbands there. So great job to anyone that's out there and pushed themselves, maybe found some new limits that hopefully they can push a little bit further next time. So let's run around down the list. So tell us one thing people would be surprised to know about you. Let's start off with Kelly or Jason, whoever.
I guess I'll take this. I have no idea what I told you before when I was on the podcast, but probably something someone doesn't know about me is that I'm from the Midwest, but I used to live in Orlando, Florida. And one of my jobs was actually at Disney World.
Yes.
Yes.
So good.
And I was all of the short characters. I was Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, Donald Duck, Timon, all those short characters. I was the person inside there signing your autographs at breakfast.
This is the best one we've heard ever.
Yep, that was me.
So my fun fact about Disney that someone told me is when you ask someone at the park to point, they always use a full hand because they don't want people pointing with one finger because it makes them seem like someone across the room could be like, "You're pointing at me," and it would seem rude. So they always point with like the open palm.
True.
Is that true? That's true.
Yeah.
And the
and
other
in some countries it might mean something than other countries. Like
yeah.
we know what the middle finger means here in the U.S., but somebody else might not know.
And the other fun fact is right. So Disney World is you're actually standing on level 2, right? It's because
Yep. There's a total subway system underneath, catacombs down there throughout the entire thing. It's all underneath.
So it allows the characters to move through the park and the trash and stuff to move through the park without the guests seeing it. So I love Disney World. They go all in, which I appreciate. So, Jason, what do you got that's going to top that? Nothing. I don't even go to you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I got nothing. All I got is burgers. Okay, so I'm a personal trainer, and when I'm in high school, I flip burgers. That was my job. I was a rally burger flipper. So I went from fast food to, healthy type person or whatever. So I got no exciting jobs. I've been a personal trainer my entire career. So I got nothing like that. I did want to say one thing, though. You said we're highly critical. I've been highly critical of Tough Mudder for the main reason is because everybody wants them to get better. I'm going to tell you, I think Kyle McLaughlin is exactly what Tough Mudder needs.
Yes,
that guy
I agree with that.
An awesome guy. He messed with me on course. He knows I'm the one that wrote an article that was critical about Tough Mudder. He was messing with me when I was on course, but he was front and center the entire weekend. And he listens when we make complaints. He'll probably listen to this podcast. He'll probably have it in for me by the time we're done with it. But I'm going to tell you that I think they're on the right track. I don't know what their vision for World's Toughest is, but I think they're doing it all right. I think, like you said, we're critical so that they know where we're coming from and they can take that into account and do with what they will. But anyway, I just want to make sure I made that apparent. I think that they are doing what they can, and I think they're doing a good job as far as the overall customer service and stuff like that.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think Kyle is doing an absolute phenomenal job hitting it out of the park. He's responsive. He answers people's questions. And that's the biggest thing, right? Like he's open. You can approach him. You can talk to him. He's visibly a figurehead of the company out there interacting with people. So yeah, 100% agree. Love what they're doing. Obviously I don't agree with every decision, but I think if you're the type of person who agrees with every decision, you're probably not looking at things objectively. If you're that means you're probably just infatuated with the company or the idea of the company, and you're right. Like I don't agree with every decision Conquer the Gauntlet makes, but it's just the way it is. It's like not to be political, but if the people who are very politically motivated, they're like, oh, this party is great and this party is the complete devil. They have no redeeming qualities. It's like you're probably not looking at things very objectively if you say one party has literally no redeeming qualities and the other party has all the perfect answers. So
what's this Disney related stuff? You're like one of these big time Disney guys. Not like Disney, like real Disney, right?
He tries to go off of what the other people say.
Yeah.
Have you never listened to Evan's podcast?
No, I have. I'm just not. He said he was really excited about the Disney comment, and as soon as he was, I was like, man, is he a Disney guy?
Disney, besides being like the future of life because they have taken over everything, with Disney Plus, and they take over Star Wars and National Geographic and all that stuff. It's like the greatest. Have you been to Disney World, Jason?
I have not been. I've been to Disney.
Oh my goodness!
He's never been there.
It's like they just go like it is completely immersive. They go all in all the time, right? Like everything is themed. Like if you go to Six Flags, it's like very loosely themed. Like it's like I'm in the Batman ride, and there's like a couple of pictures of Batman, and that's it, right? And like the rest of everything else is like Disney, when you go into a different section of the park, like everything is themed like that. Like the desserts, the the characters, the bath, like everything's themed.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
And they just opened Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, which I want to go to so bad, and build a $200 lightsaber, which I don't need. But I will gladly buy it anyway.
I do have a lightsaber. I have one of those.
Yeah,
I got one.
I've already.
$200.
I have a really nice lightsaber that I've shared before. So yeah, I definitely don't need another one, but I will buy another one when I go once my kids are old enough.
The next Endure the Gauntlet, we need to bring our lightsabers and have a duel in the middle of the dark.
Well, I don't. Let's see, Endure the Gauntlet. I do have a ultra OCR thing planned for 2020, but I'm not ready to reveal that yet.
All right.
I feel like I'm taking a step down / sideways because I'm running out of ideas. I don't have any good ones this time. We're just gonna call it. We'll wrap things up. Jason and Kelly, thanks again for coming on, and we will see people later. Before we go though, quick couple of shout outs. One, there's a contest ongoing. I'm giving away free Bleg mitts and free books. Make sure you enter that. It's going to be on the Strength and Speed Facebook page, or you can check my personal page. That is a test run. So I want to make sure the program worked before the next big contest, which is the Hannibal Race Kuwait giveaway. So it's going to be a similar format. Check for it on Facebook. I'm also probably going to do a couple of like secret words that I'm going to reveal on the podcast, and you can enter it on the contest, and that'll allow you to get more entries. So since we have Jason on the podcast, today's secret word is Neptune. Neune, right? So enter that, and you'll get a couple more entries to win on the entry form. That contest should go live almost as this podcast airs, or a couple days after this podcast airs. So Neptune is your secret word there. And other than that, I'm about to get a resupply of Bleg mitts in. Not a huge resupply, so if you're waiting to order some of them for Christmas for someone, or put them on your Christmas list, make sure you order them soon. I think I should have them by probably end of the first week of December. They should be back up on the site. Same thing with books. I just got a whole new resupply of Ultra OCR Man in, and once I run out of this one and my other books, I'm not planning on reordering because it's expensive to reorder. So check those out if you're looking for Christmas presents for OCR family, friends, etc. Any final shout outs you want to give, Jason or Kelly?
I just want to thank my family for always being supportive of me, and shout out to Mr. Neptune there, Jason Rulo, too, for helping me be successful at 2 World's Toughest Mudders for sure.
Jason, what do you got?
Well, I'm going to throw the shout out to my Alpha Racing team. Kelly and I are on the same team, and the people that came out to help us out, Jesse Bay and Leah Inslee and Chris Balvin, pitting for us at World's Toughest. It was pretty fantastic. We couldn't do it without them. Really appreciate
they were fantastic.
All right, we'll let everyone go, and we will catch you next week. Planning on doing a rundown of all the big 24-hour OCRs. So hoping to get someone on here from Sweden, see what that was like, and then scheduled to get Jarrett Newby on from who ran the Platinum Rig 24-hour relay, which is the same weekend as Toughest Mudder Las Vegas. So I'm going to kind of do a 24-hour rundown for the next couple of weeks. So I hope you Ultra OCR people listen in, and you can see what else is going on. We will catch you guys later.